Move now to question number 4 in the name of Mark Cameron.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Regulation. What problems, if any, does he hope to solve in his portfolio?
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. At its heart, it is New Zealand's long-term disease of low productivity growth that deprives New Zealanders of not only prosperity but so many of the things that they would like to have. And elements of that productivity problem is caused by excessive red tape and regulation, which adds costs to doing everything from building a home to running an early childhood education centre. And part of that problem is the fact that it's very difficult for people to identify those who put the red tape and costs onto them. A Minister of Regulation will be changing the way that government makes rules and allowing those who are the victims of red tape and regulation to see who is responsible and see a pathway out of the thicket that has stopped them growing their productivity.
That was a very long answer that had the indulgence that comes at the end of the year.
Supplementary. Why is a Ministry for Regulation needed to reduce regulation?
Well, Mr Speaker, there's 34 public service departments. There's an estimated, and this is as close as Treasury can estimate, 180 to 200 regulatory management systems and 10 to 14,000 public servants engaged in regulatory activity. Now, I would have thought having one small department to give New Zealanders a chance of beating that back is a pretty good deal.
Supplementary.
Just hang on, Mark. The Honourable Duncan Webb.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Given that ensuring good legislative and regulatory design is already the role of government departments, the Legislation Design Advisory Committee, Treasury, the Parliamentary Council's Office, the Regulation Review Committee, Subject Matter Select Committees, the Attorney-General and this House, isn't it the case that a new department is simply duplicative, excessive red tape and regulation, and a waste of taxpayers' money that does not even meet his own standards of regulatory good management?
Yeah, well, that was a question that matched the previous answer. But anyway.
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Minister on becoming the spokesperson for regulation within the Labor Party. Now, clearly the Labor Party believes that some, as he would say, duplication is necessary when he's got all the other spokespeople on the opposition benches, and this government happens to believe that it's necessary to have somebody focused on regulation, just as the Labor Party appears to think it's worth having him focused on it.
Supplementary.
Mark Cameron.
For clarity, does this mean he doesn't think we've been regulating to a high standard already?
Mr Speaker, that is exactly the point, and you hear it up and down the country almost wherever you go. It's people who complain it takes longer to get permission to build a home than it does to actually build it. It's people who complain that it is almost impossible to get credit without jumping through the most inordinate number of hoops. It's people who just wanted to open kids' eyes to the world and yet find themselves, for example, in an early childhood education centre opening up, alleging that they have 303 regulations to follow before they can welcome a kid through the door. Mr Speaker, over successive governments we have failed to regulate responsibly. We now have a government that is going to take it seriously with, I understand, for the first time, a minister in Cabinet responsible for regulation.
Good.
Supplementary.
Mark Cameron.
What are the areas he wants to focus on?
Well, Mr Speaker, while the government has not made such decisions, the coalition documents that formed the government contemplate regulatory reviews going through sectors of what I might call victims of red tape and regulation, sector by sector. It contemplates early childhood education, which I've already mentioned as being particularly over-regulated. It mentions the financial sector, which I've already mentioned. It also mentions health workforce, where there appears to be real difficulties getting people who are eminently qualified to perform a duty in New Zealand to be allowed to do so here, and we find them performing that duty for citizens of another country shortly after being rejected here. But I'm sure the member, as the chair of the Primary Production Committee, will be pleased to know the documents also consider a regulatory review of the agricultural sector. Thank you, Mr Speaker.